So he was conscious on the way to the hospital?
He was conscious on the way to the hospital. He was conscious in the ambulance. He was conscious after they did the surgery.
Suge Knight is rotting in a prison cell, legally blind and fighting for his life, but he is no longer silent. As he watches his rival Sean Diddy Combs face federal indictments, Suge is finally exposing the dark secrets of the 1990s. From FBI informants to dirty cops and the true story of Biggie Smalls' murder, the king of the West Coast is ready to drop the final bomb. The blind man in the concrete box? Marion Suge Knight sits in the Richard J. Donovan Correctional Facility in San Diego, a place that smells of bleach, steel, and despair. He has been caged here for years, serving a 28-year sentence that likely ends in a coffin. He is not the imposing figure who once dangled Vanilla Ice off a balcony or smoked cigars in the VIP section of Club 662. The man in the cell is falling apart. His body is betraying him in the most brutal way possible. Suge is legally blind. The diabetes that has plagued him for years has finally taken his sight. He has completely lost vision in one eye and clings to a terrifying 15% visibility in the other. He lives in a world of gray shadows and blurry shapes. He has blood clots in his lungs that make every breath a struggle. He has lost over 35 pounds, his once massive frame withering away in the prison infirmary. But while his eyes are failing, his ears are wide open. He cannot watch the news on the mounted televisions, but he listens. He hears the reports coming from the outside world. He hears about the federal raids. He hears about the lawsuits. And most importantly, he hears the name of his nemesis, Sean Diddy Combs, being dragged through the mud. Suge decided that silence was no longer an option. He launched a podcast from inside the prison walls called Collect Call. The audio is grainy, recorded over a prison phone line that cuts out and crackles, but the voice is unmistakable. It is deep, gravelly, and full of menace. Suge Knight is talking, and for the first time in 30 years, the world is terrified of what he might say. The warning to Brother Love. When the FBI kicked down the doors of Diddy's mansions in Los Angeles and Miami in 2024, seizing electronics and boxes of evidence, Suge Knight did not act surprised. He laughed. He picked up the phone for his podcast and sent a direct, chilling message to the man he calls Brother Love. "I'll tell you what, Puffy," Suge said, his voice echoing off the concrete walls. "Your life is in danger." This was not a threat from Suge. It was a warning about the company Diddy keeps. Suge explained that Diddy knows too many secrets. He knows about the secret rooms at the parties. He knows which powerful politicians, executives, and celebrities were involved in the alleged freak-offs. Suge warned that these powerful people cannot afford for Diddy to take the stand. He claimed that Diddy is a liability, and in the world of high-stakes crime, liabilities get eliminated. Suge then gave Diddy some graphic, terrifying advice about surviving prison. He told him he needs to make a decision right now about whether he is going to stand up or squat down when he uses the prison toilet. In the brutal language of incarceration, Suge was telling Diddy that his Brother Love persona would get him eaten alive on the inside. He warned him that prison is not a place for games, and Diddy's soft image would make him a target from day one. But the most shocking part of Suge's message wasn't about the future, it was about the past. He began to connect the dots between Diddy's current sex trafficking charges and the violent war that claimed the lives of Tupac Shakur and Biggie Smalls. Suge implied that the violence Diddy is accused of today is the same violence he used back in 1997, the secret of Mel's Diner. For decades, the narrative has been simple. Suge Knight was the violent gangster, and Puffy was the shiny suit-wearing businessman who just wanted to dance. Suge says that story is a lie designed to protect a federal informant. To prove it, he tells a story about a night at Mel's Diner in Los Angeles that changes everything. It was a regular night, and Suge was eating at the famous diner on the Sunset Strip. It's a family place, brightly lit and full of tourists. Suge was the most feared man in the industry, so usually, if people saw him, they went the other way. But on this night, Diddy found out Suge was there, and Diddy didn't run. According to testimony that has recently surfaced, Diddy gathered his crew. He jumped into a car driven by his assistant, David James, but they didn't go to the diner to talk. David James testified in court that he was terrified because he looked at the weapons Diddy and his security guard were holding. There were 3 guns in the car. They drove to the diner and began circling the parking lot. They were hunting. Diddy, the man who preached bad boy for life and danced in videos, was allegedly prowling a diner parking lot with a loaded weapon, looking for a shootout with Suge Knight. Suge had already slipped away, so the confrontation never happened, but the intent was clear. Suge uses this story to hammer home his point. Diddy was never innocent. If he was willing to bring 3 guns to a diner to kill Suge Knight, what else was he capable of? Was he capable of ordering a hit on Tupac? Was he capable of sacrificing his own artist, Biggie Smalls, to win a war? The roots of the bloodshed. To understand why Biggie had to die on that cool March night, you have to understand the hate. It wasn't just a music rivalry, it was a coastal war fueled by ego, money, and gang politics. Suge Knight built Death Row Records like a fortress in Los Angeles. He hired Bloods from Compton to work security. He ruled with an iron fist. Puffy built Bad Boy Records in New York like a VIP lounge. He hired Crips to protect him when he came west. The friction turned into fire at the Source Awards in August 1995. Suge walked onto the stage at the Paramount Theater in New York City. He stared out at the crowd of New Yorkers and delivered the most disrespectful line in hip-hop history. He told the audience that if they wanted to be stars without their executive producer, all in the videos dancing, they should come to Death Row. The crowd booed, but the damage was done. Suge had publicly humiliated Puffy in his own city. From that moment on, it was war. Tupac's rage. Then came Tupac Shakur. Suge bailed Tupac out of prison in late 1995, paying a massive $1.4 million bond. Tupac was fresh out of a cage, shot 5 times, and convinced that Biggie and Puffy had set him up. He was a weapon, and Suge pointed him directly at Bad Boy. Tupac released Hit 'Em Up, a song so violent and personal, it shocked the world. He claimed he slept with Biggie's wife, Faith Evans. He threatened to kill the entire Bad Boy roster. He made fun of Mobb Deep's sickle cell anemia. It wasn't rap anymore. It was a death threat on a beat. The tension snapped in Las Vegas on September 7th, 1996. After watching a Mike Tyson fight, Suge and Tupac stomped a Southside Crip named Orlando Anderson in the lobby of the MGM Grand. Hours later, a white Cadillac pulled up next to Suge's BMW and opened fire. Tupac was hit 4 times. He died 6 days later. Suge was grazed by a bullet, but he survived. As he sat in prison for a probation violation related to the fight, the streets of Compton were talking. The word was that the Southside Crips had done the shooting, but they had been paid by someone in New York. A Crip leader named Keith D later claimed Diddy offered $1 million for the heads of Suge and Tupac. While Diddy has always denied this, the Bloods believed it. And on the streets, belief is enough to justify revenge. Biggie's fatal mistake. 6 months after Tupac died, Christopher Wallace, Biggie Smalls, made a decision that would cost him everything. He had a new album coming out, Life After Death. He wanted to promote it. He decided to go to Los Angeles. His friends begged him not to go. They told him the West Coast was a war zone. They told him the Bloods were hunting for payback. But Biggie didn't listen. He was a rapper, not a gangster. He believed that his music was bigger than the politics. He thought he could go to LA, show love, and get love back. He went on a radio show in San Francisco and told the host, "I'm not a security hazard." He tried to play it cool, but he hired heavy security just in case. He brought the Junior MA and a team of bodyguards. He thought he was safe. The Vibe Party Trap. On the night of March 8, 1997, Biggie attended a party hosted by Vibe magazine at the Peterson Automotive Museum on Wilshire Boulevard. It was supposed to be a celebration. The biggest stars in the world were there, but the atmosphere inside was heavy. There were too many gang members in the crowd. People were throwing up signs. The tension was thick enough to choke on. At 12:30 a.m., the fire marshal shut the party down due to overcrowding. The music stopped. The lights came on. Hundreds of people poured out onto the sidewalk. It was a warm night, the air filled with the smell of expensive cologne and exhaust fumes. Biggie and Diddy gathered their entourage to leave. They had 3 large SUVs. They lined them up on the street, preparing for a convoy. The convoy. The setup of the cars that night has been analyzed for decades. It was a precise formation that somehow went terribly wrong. The lead car was a Chevrolet Blazer. It carried the head of security, Paul Alford. His job was to clear the path. The second car was a green GMC Suburban. This was Biggie's car. Biggie sat in the front passenger seat, the death seat. He was a big man, heavy and tall, so he needed the legroom. In the back seat were his close friends, Lil Cease and Damian D-Rock Butler. The driver was Gregory G-Money Young. The third car was another Suburban, carrying Diddy and his bodyguards. They pulled out of the parking garage and turned right onto Fairfax Avenue. They drove a short distance to the corner of Wilshire Boulevard. The traffic light was yellow. Diddy's car, which was trailing, suddenly sped up. He blasted through the yellow light, shooting across the intersection before it turned red. Biggie's driver, G-Money, stopped. The light turned red. Biggie was now separated from Diddy. He was sitting at a red light, a sitting duck, with no car in front of him, and Diddy speeding away. The man in the bow tie. Biggie was relaxed. He rolled down his window to get some fresh air. He saw some girls walking on the sidewalk and smiled at them. Inside the car, a tape of Life After Death was playing. D-Rock leaned forward from the back seat, tapped Biggie on the shoulder, and said, "You back, baby." Biggie laughed, his deep voice filling the car. No doubt. Those were the last words he ever spoke. A dark car pulled up slowly on the right side. It was a black Chevrolet Impala SS, pristine and shiny. It stopped right next to Biggie's door. The driver was a black male. Witnesses described him vividly. He was wearing a blue suit and a bow tie. He looked like he belonged to the Nation of Islam. But other witnesses, including some investigated by documentarians like Mike Dorsey, claimed there was a man in a striped shirt nearby who signaled the shooter. The mystery of the striped shirt man and the bow tie man has confused investigators for years. Was it a coordinated hit? The driver of the Impala looked at Biggie. He didn't say a word. He raised a blue steel 9mm semi-automatic pistol. He rested it on his forearm to steady his aim. 4 shots that shook the world. The night exploded. 4 shots ripped through the metal door of the Suburban. The glass shattered, spraying the interior with diamonds of safety glass. The first bullet hit Biggie in the left forearm. It traveled down to his wrist and shattered the bone. This injury was crucial. It meant Biggie couldn't lift his arm to shield his face or chest. The second bullet hit him in the back. It missed all the vital organs and exited through his left shoulder. The third bullet hit his left thigh. It tore through the leg and struck his scrotum, causing a painful but non-lethal laceration. If the shooter had stopped there, Biggie would have lived. But the fourth bullet was the kill shot. It entered his right hip. It tore through his body with devastating force. It perforated his colon. It shredded his liver. It pierced his heart. It finally stopped in the upper lobe of his left lung. The shooter didn't panic. He didn't speed off wildly. He calmly stepped on the gas. The Impala turned right onto Wilshire Boulevard and disappeared into the Los Angeles night, vanishing like a ghost. The chaos inside. Inside the Suburban, there was pandemonium. Lil Cease and D-Rock had ducked when the shots started. They popped up, screaming, "Big! Big!" Biggie was slumped over the dashboard. He wasn't moving. There was blood everywhere. G-Money, the driver, looked at his friend. He didn't wait for an ambulance. He knew Cedars-Sinai Medical Center was just blocks away. He slammed on the gas. He drove the Suburban on the wrong side of the road, honking the horn, flashing the lights, screaming for cars to move. Diddy's car, having seen the commotion in the rearview mirror, turned around and raced back. They formed a desperate caravan, speeding toward the hospital. The thoracotomy. They arrived at the emergency bay at Cedars-Sinai. The doors flew open. The bodyguards grabbed Biggie. He was dead weight, heavy and limp. They heaved him onto a gurney and ran him inside. The doctors immediately saw the severity of the situation. Biggie had no pulse. He wasn't breathing. They rushed him into the trauma room and made a split-second decision. They had to perform an emergency thoracotomy. This is a brutal, last-ditch medical procedure. The doctors took a scalpel and cut Biggie's chest open. They used a heavy metal retractor to crack his ribs and spread them apart. They reached their hands inside his chest cavity. They grabbed his heart. They began to squeeze it rhythmically, trying to manually pump blood through his body to keep his brain alive. It was a gruesome, desperate scene. The room was slick with blood. The doctors worked feverishly, massaging the heart, trying to clamp the bleeding liver. But the damage from that fourth bullet was catastrophic. His heart was destroyed. There was nothing left to pump. At 1:15 a.m., the doctor stopped. They looked at the clock. They pronounced Christopher Wallace dead. He was only 24 years old. Faith's goodbye. Outside the operating room, the scene was one of pure heartbreak. Diddy was pacing the hallway, praying, crying, falling to his knees. But the most tragic figure was Faith Evans. She had been at the party too, but had left separately. She rushed to the hospital when she heard the news. When she arrived, she saw the look on Diddy's face and she knew. She asked to see him. She walked into the cold hospital room. She didn't want to believe he was gone. She walked up to the body. She touched his face. She rubbed his stomach, a gesture of intimacy and love. She whispered to him, asking him to wake up. She later said she wanted to tell him a joke, just to hear his deep, booming laugh one more time. But the king of New York was silent. The man who rapped about life after death was gone. The dirty cop and the hitman. The investigation into Biggie's murder was a disaster from the start. A detective named Russell Poole took the case. He was an honest cop in a corrupt city. He started finding clues that terrified him. He found a specific type of ammunition at the scene. Gecko 9mm armor-piercing rounds. These were rare. Poole's investigation led him to a rogue LAPD officer named David Mack. Mack was a corrupt cop who worked in the Rampart Division. He drove a black Impala SS, the exact same car used in the shooting. He had a friend named Amir Muhammad, a mortgage broker who went by the name Harry Billups. Amir Muhammad fit the description of the Bowtie Man perfectly. Poole's theory was explosive. He believed Suge Knight, from his prison cell, had hired David Mack to organize the hit. Mac, in turn, used his friend Amir to pull the trigger. It was the perfect crime. A cop and a hitman, protected by the badge. But Poole was shut down. The LAPD didn't want a scandal. David Mack was eventually arrested for robbing a bank of $722,000, but he was never charged with Biggie's murder. The Poochie theory. Years later, another detective named Greg Cadding opened a new investigation. He found a different truth. He tracked down a woman he called Teresa Swan. She confessed that Suge gave her money to pay a hitman. The hitman's name was Wardell Poochie Faust. Poochie was a Mob Peru gang member and a loyal soldier for death row. Cadding alleged that Suge paid Poochie $13,000 to kill Biggie, but justice would never come. Poochie was shot and killed in 2003 while riding his motorcycle in Compton. He was shot 10 times in the back, a gang execution. With the shooter dead, the case was officially solved by the task force, but no one was ever prosecuted. The final reckoning. Now, in 2025, the story has taken its final dark turn. Suge Knight, blind and broken, is the last man standing. He insists that the police theories were only half the story. He points the finger back at Diddy. Suge claims Diddy was an FBI informant the whole time. He argues that the government protected Diddy while they dismantled death row. He asks why Diddy ran that yellow light. He asks why the security was so lax. He paints a picture of a sacrifice, suggesting Biggie was worth more dead than alive. The tragedy is that the one person who fought hardest for the truth is no longer here to hear it. Valletta Wallace, Biggie's mother, spent 28 years suing the LAPD, doing interviews, and demanding justice. She was a warrior for her son, but in 2025, at the age of 78, Valletta Wallace passed away. She died of natural causes, never seeing her son's killer in handcuffs. She died with a broken heart, but with her spirit unbroken. As Diddy sits in a cell awaiting his own trial for sex trafficking, and Suge sits in his cell in darkness, the era of 90s hip-hop kings has ended in ruins. The music plays on, but the blood on the tracks never dried. Biggie once rapped, "You're nobody till somebody kills you." He was wrong. He was a father, a son, and a legend. And as the blind man in San Diego picks up the phone to record another podcast, he reminds us that the truth, no matter how long it is buried, always finds a way to the surface.